Hi there, I'm Clayton Jubenville with HayBoss Feeders, and today we are building a standard do-it-yourself feeder. So I went to the lumber yard, I went and checked out the materials needed on my instructions here that I got with my do-it-yourself feeder, and I went and picked up all the lumber and screws that I needed to build this do-it-yourself, and I'm going to walk you guys through it. So first thing we got to do is we got to cut our floorboards. There was 11 2x8s. I bought 8 footers and I got to cut them to 86 inches, and then I got to place them all side by side and measure how wide the floor will be. How wide is 11 2x8s put together, because they're all a little bit different, and you don't want to cut your 4x4s or your 4x6s until you got that measurement. So I'm going to go ahead, cut all the 2x8s at 86 inches, and then I'm going to lay them on the floor and figure out my width. Now I already pre-marked them before the video, so I got them all laid out ready to cut at 86. Okay, I got all 11 2x8s laid down nice and tight on the floor. Now I'm just going to take a measurement of the width, and this will give me the width of the length to cut my 4x6 skids. So it looks like I got 80 1/4. So that's how wide our feeder floor will be, 80 1/4 by 86. I'll measure 80 1/4. And I'll cut 3 of them at 80 1/4. Okay, now that I got that done, these are going to be our skids, and they're going to be standing up like this on the ground. So I'm going to cut an angle here, a 45-degree angle, on both sides of this 4x4, on this end and that end. And that'll act just to allow us to be able to push it on the dirt or on the grass, push or pull our feeder. So I'm going to measure 2 inches down from here, leave 2 inches of flatness, and then I'm just going to draw a 45 like this, and that's what I'm going to cut off this side and that side on all 6 of them. So I'm going to set my saw at 45. So that's about the chunk you're going to pull off here. It's about that big of a chunk you're pulling off. It'll look like that when you're done. So just do that at both ends. Okay, I got my 3 skids laid out. Now, for my end frames, I gotta screw a 2x4 on top of those skids just to lift the floor up a little bit more. My roller and handle frame take up a little bit more room than just the 5.5 or 6 inches that those 4x6s are cut at, so I need to add another 1.5 inches on top. So I remember my 80 1/4 inches for my length. I'm gonna cut 3 2x4s at 80 1/4. Okay, then I'm going to place these on top of the 4x6s. And you'll notice they're not quite as wide as the 4x6. So what I'm going to do about that is on this side, I'm going to keep it flush with the outside when I screw it. The middle one I'm going to put right in the middle. And this end one, I'll put flush with this outside. Okay, so I'll go ahead and maybe put 4 screws in each one of those. Oh, and before I started this video, I put some 2.5 inch screws in my pouch, And I also have my 4-inch screws that were on my list in my pouch as well. Okay, so this one's a little bit crooked, so I'm going to put a screw, or actually I'll put a toenail in on this 2x4 to pull it over. Just to straighten out that 2x4, make it flush with the skid. This middle one I'll put in the middle, approximately. And this one I'll put on the outside. Okay, so now we can start laying out our 2 end boards. We'll grab, let's say, our 2 of our nicer boards. And we'll put them on the ends. And for the rest of the floor, we'll use our 4-inch screws. So I'll put 1 screw in this corner. Nice and flush with the outside and the end. And I'll put 1 screw in this corner. Then on my 2 boards I will measure, I know I cut the 2x8s at 86 inches. So I'm going to measure halfway, which is 43. Put a mark on both of them. And that's where I'll put this middle skid. Okay, we'll do the same on this side. Make sure it's flush on the outside and the ends. Okay, now that we got that done, we're going to have to square our floor before we put in all our other boards. So to do that, just cross measure from corner to corner. So I got 1/16 and a half. And you're trying to make this the same. And I got 1/18 and a half. So I know there's a 2-inch difference. So if I make it 1/17 and a half, I should be pretty square. So I'll move that over to 1/17 and a half. Then I'll double check this side. So now we can just lay all our boards in. I'll put good side up. So just flush your ends and put 2 screws in each board on each skid. And instead of measuring every board on the middle, I'll just place a straight edge from the screw to the screw, and then I can do all my middle boards. It looks a little bit bowed in, so again I'm going to toenail right here. And that that should help pull my skid out a little bit. Okay, so that's not too bad. And notice I'm keeping my screws at least an inch or inch and a half in from the end so that I don't split my board, so that my screw doesn't split the board. Okay, and there you have your floor before you do it yourself. So our next step is drilling our holes and mounting our do-it-yourself frames, the handle and the roller frame. Okay, so now we got our roller frame and our handle frame laid out beside our floor. And this is actually the hardest part of building the DIY. So what we're going to do is we got to mark out our holes and we got to drill our holes so that we can bolt these are going to be gussets that go under the floor. We're going to bolt those through the skid and then through our handle frame on this side. So it's going to look something like this. This will be under the floor, and that's just going to brace up our frames so that they're not so wobbly. So that one will go there. This one will go something like this. It's going to look like that under the floor. So I want my holes right in the middle of the floor. And if you look at your instructions, you got to put your holes right in the middle of the floor. Right in the middle of the floor. And we're going to put our holes 2 3/4 inches down and 7 3/4 inches down. Okay? So you go 2 3/4 and 7 3/4. These holes are 5 inches apart. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to lay out our holes. And I find to do this, it's easier if you stand the floor up. Okay, so it stands up not bad by itself. I'm gonna throw these little blocks that we cut off underneath just as a little safety. Okay. So we remember that our skids were 80 1/4. So I'm going to make a mark at halfway. That's 40 1/8. 40 1/8 on both sides. Okay, and then at 2 3/4, I'll make a square line all the way. And then mark out 2 3/4 from the top of the floor and 7 3/4 on both sides. Okay, and now you got to drill a 3/4 inch hole. So I'm going to do a first hole with my 3/8 auger bit. I'm going to drill one of those first. Try to drill these as straight as possible. Otherwise you'll have a hard time lining everything up. Okay, I'm going to put my 3/4 inch bit in. Okay, and I forgot to tell you that you want to make sure you don't have any screws when you were screwing your floor that are going to interfere with the exact center of your floor at the 40 1/8. So that's what happened to me here is I got a screw through my 2x4 at 40 1/8. So I'm going to have to pull that out, that one, and just move it. Okay, so another thing we got to do is we're going to cut some braces to screw to the skid, and that's just going to help sturdy up this handle frame. So what we want to do is put a put one of these cut-off blocks underneath the handle frame. And then we're gonna place our two boards. Place two of the boards flush with the top of this handle holder here, and then make sure it's running straight. The board is running straight straight perpendicular to your handle frame. And then we're just going to trace right here. We're just going to trace right here, and this is what we're going to cut. And I'll show you later, after we mount it, we're going to use these blocks to screw to the floor to help us sturdy this. Just give us extra strength. Extra strength and less wobble. Okay, so you can see you're going to have a left and a right, and I'm going to cut this off here. I'm going to cut this board with my saw here, and then I'm going to cut this straight down here too. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you where they go in a little bit here. Okay, so we got our two 3/4 inch holes drilled on both sides. Now we're ready to bolt our frames through the wood with the gussets, and with that we're going to be using these big 3/4 inch bolts. So they're 3/4 by 4 by 5, 3/4 inch by 5. So you're going to take your handle frame, you're going to tip it up on its side. Make sure the sticker is facing outside and the flat part of your channel is on the inside. And you'll do this bottom hole first. And this, you might want a hand with this, but so I'm going to put my bolt in like that. And then I'm going to put my gusset, so you want the flat part of your gusset on the bottom of your floor. And then these two 3/4 inch holes are going to line up with your big bolts. So I'm going to put my gusset in like that. And then I'm going to hold it just hand tight with a nut. And I'll do that on the other end. So I'm going to line it up. Stick my bolt through. Okay, so it's going to look something like that. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. I'm going to grab my impact wrench and I'm going to just snug them up a little bit. And then we're going to lift up our end frames on a sawhorse, and then we'll put the last bolt in. Okay, so I got my 1 1/8 socket and I got my 1 1/8 wrench. I'm just going to snug this bolt up. Okay, so hopefully if you drilled straight holes, you'll be able to line this up pretty good. So I'm going to grab my sawhorse and then I'm going to lift up my frames, and I'm going to try to have them perpendicular with the floor. So even if I have to block it up a little bit, I'm just going to get it perpendicular with the floor. Okay, we got our two big 3/4 inch bolts in on this side. I'm just going to snug them up, and then we're going to stick our bolts, our two 3/8 bolts in through the floor here. So I'll just snug these up. That's an 1 1/8 wrench and an 1 1/8 socket. Okay, so now for the gussets, we're just going to hold the square on the floor, lift it up till it's square. I'm going to make a mark here on this one. That one's good right there. And then we'll take our 3/8 bit and we'll drill right through. Hold it up to your mark. washer on the bolt and then slide it in from the back side. Okay, and you put a nut on the bottom side of the floor, and then you can go ahead and tighten those up. Do that on the other side as well. I'm tightening it enough until the washer at least sinks into the wood a bit. So now I'll get my buddy to help me lower it. Okay, so now I'm gonna, those 2x8 blocks that we cut at an angle, I'm gonna show you about those. So, over time, you know, your holes in wood might all belong, and this frame might get a little bit loose. Right now it's nice and snug, but maybe later it might work a little bit loose and those holes might all belong. So I'm just gonna grab the blocks that we cut and I'm gonna screw them in there right up against this handle frame, and that's gonna help us to give us more bracing for this handle frame. So I'm just going to screw those in. Okay, I just eyeballed this. Make sure it's running up and down straight. Then we're going to place these here and just test them out before we screw them. Make sure that they sit nice and tight and they don't go over top the floor here. So this one's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead, hold it tight. I'm going to put 5 screws in here. And I'm trying to get the screws in the side of this 2x4 here, and that's where I feel it'll be the strongest hold. Okay, so I laid out my sawhorses. Now I'm going to place my 2 tongue and groove, 3/4 inch tongue and groove plywoods on top. And then we're going to pound the tongue into the groove, make one big sheet of plywood that's 8x8, and then we'll do our measurements and do our cutting. So we'll take a hammer and try to pound our joint tight. Make sure you're flush with the other sheet. Okay, so you go ahead and look at your joint. My joint's pretty tight. I'm happy with that. So we actually want it to spin like the roof is going to sit with the joint in the middle of the roof going this way. You want the joint of your plywood going this way. So we know we got 80 1/4 by 86. Okay, so this way is 80 1/4. So I'm going to measure 80 1/4 from my joint, from the middle of the joint there, and from here we're going to cut 80 1/4 all the way. Okay, so we cut our plywood 80 1/4 this way, and now we know it's 86 inches wide, so we're going to cut our plywood 86 inches the other way. But because I got the joint and I want the plywood joint right in the middle, I'm going to go 43 inches from the middle on each side, and that'll give us our 86-inch roof, and they'll still leave our joint right in the middle of our roof. Okay, so now our roof's 80 1/4 by 86, and now I'm going to cut 45-degree angle on each corner, and that's just it. More for aesthetics, make it look a little better. Okay, next step is some 4x4s. We're going to cut our 4x4s. They're going to be 86 inches long. And if you look in your instructions, double check your measurements. I'm 86 1/8. I'm happy with that. So if you look in your instructions on building the roof, your 4x4 should be 22.5 inches apart from the center. Okay, and they're going to be 86 inches long going this way. So we're going to measure the length here, which was 80 1/4 again. We're going to measure the center, which is 40 1/8. Make our mark, our center mark. And for 22.5, we want to go 11 1/4 inches on each side of the line. So I'm going to just make two marks, 11 1/4 and 22.5. And that is going to be the center where we screw our 4x4s. So 80 1/4 divided by 2 is 40 1/8. And then 11 1/2. Or sorry, 11 1/4 on each side of that line. We're cutting these at 86. So go on that side. You see this mark here? We're going to hold these 4x4s up and screw them. And I'm going to put a couple screws, maybe 2 or 3, at least 3 inches in, so that it doesn't affect with the holes that we have to drill for those brackets. So you put the mark right in the center of the 4x4. Okay, now we're going to put a couple stiffening boards on the ends. That's going to be out of a 2x4. We're just going to take an 8-foot 2x4, cut it in half, and screw it underneath here. And that'll just stiffen up our joint on our plywood and just help to make it a little bit stronger. So I'm going to cut a 2x4 in half. Okay, so then we're going to cut these, we're going to put them under here, which is going to be the top of our roof, by the way. This is the bottom of our roof, and we're going to be flipping this roof and tarring this side of it. But I'm thinking it would look a little nicer if I 45'd these corners, so I'm just going to 45 these corners while I'm here. So these screws are going to go a little bit past the other side of the wood, so after I flip it, I'll just grind the heads a little bit, or you could put them in at an angle, whatever you choose. Make a center mark of your 4 foot. Line that up with the joint of your plywood. Keep it nice and flush to the end. Okay, so now that we got that done, well, our roof is upside down, and before we tar it, let's put our roof bars on. It'll be the best time to put our roof bars on now. So in your instructions, you'll see these roof bars go on the bottom side of your roof, which is this flat side. They go 2 inches in from the end. That's your hole. 2 inches in from your end, and then they go 2 inches offset oppositely on this joint line, right? So basically what they're going to do is that when they're on the bottom of your roof, they're going to be offset, they're going to be angled pointing towards the rollers. When you put your, when you install your roof, they're going to be pointing towards the rollers. So I'm going to pretend my rollers are going to be there. So I'm going to offset them, and I'm going to point them both. They'll look like that, pointing towards the rollers there. So 2 inches in, and then I'm going to go 2 inches on each side of this line. And drill my first hole. So those are 1/4 inch. That's a 1/4 inch hole, 1/4 inch bolts. So you're going to be going through the 2x4 on this side, so you're going to use the long one on the outside. Put a washer and a nut on the top side of the roof. Okay, put that one in. Measure your 2 inch offset. Going this way now. And you can drill that hole. So what these roof bars do is you'll clip your net to these latches here, and it'll just stop the animals from being able to pull your net down, or from them like eating over top of your net. And it also keeps your nets running parallel with each other. Before we flip it over is we're going to want to put 2 bolts in each plywood towards the center here. That's just so we don't depend solely on the screws to hold the plywood up on a big snow load. So we're going to put 2 bolts 3 inches away from the joint through the 4x4s, bolts and washers, and then we're also going to go ahead and screw screws every 9 inches down the 4x4s. Okay, so we'll do that, and then we will flip it over and tar the roof. Oh, sorry, I meant 6 inches from the joint. We're going to go 6 inches from the joint. Okay, and you might as well mark out your screws. Okay, so we'll put our bolts through with washers on both sides, on the nut side and the bolt side. Okay, there you go. We're done our roof. We're gonna flip it over, grind any screws that are sticking through, and then tar. Bring it over to this end. Just go like this. Here, hold it up. At 90 degrees. You go that way. So we're gonna grind these screws, tar it, and then we're going to mount it on the feeder. Okay, ready for tar. Okay, now that we tarred our roof and completed it on the sawhorses, we're ready to mount it on the top of the feeder. So we're just going to lift it up. I got help from a buddy, and we're going to lift it up and then drill our holes and mount it to our brackets. Just center it. Center it in your brackets. You pretty center? Yeah. Make sure you're tight. Yep, you are. Okay, so you notice the roof bars are angled towards the rollers. Roof bars are angled towards the rollers. Roof is mounted now. Next step is putting on our nets, and I'll show you that. Okay, now we're gonna install the nets. On this feeder, I'm putting a number 2 net. I'm gonna use it for horses, but I'd also use a number 2 for sheep, larger sheep. We also have number 1 net, and we have number 3 net that's a little bit bigger than the number 2. So I'll show you how to install the nets now. Okay, so you want to make sure you run your nets inside the roller. The rollers are already preloaded, and they have little bolts up, little 1/4-inch bolts up at the top in the disc to hold it preloaded. So once you put your net on, you could latch your handle so that it will hold it at one end while you work. But just keep in mind, you got to flip your net the right way so that the angle iron goes in between the roller and the frame, and then you're going to hook it into these brackets on the roller. So this is upside down. I'm going to have to turn it. I'm going to flip it around, latch my handle. towards the frame. And I'm going to weave it between the frame and the roller. I'm going to come around, I'm going to stick the bottom in to the bracket, and I'm just going to pull the middle of my angle iron. Oh, I should tell you, it comes with a Velcro strap here on your rollers. You're going to have to take that off first. So just take that Velcro strap off. Pull the middle of your angle iron so it bends. Tuck it up in there. Then even out the slack on your net. So that you think you have half the slack on the top and half the slack on the bottom half. Then you weave your Velcro strap. This is what holds it in place. You put it in the middle of the roller. Okay, so once your Velcro strap is on, then you got to take your preload bolt out. So you can just undo the nut by hand here. And I like to keep my bolts in my tool tube in case I ever need to change my nets or flip my nets in the field. I'll always have these bolts here to put back in to hold my nets. So now I just take up some of the pressure, pull my 4-inch, 3.5-inch bolt out, put it in my tool tube. And there you go. Make sure your lock's down. When your bail is in, you put your lock down. And now you don't have to worry about it until the bail's done, until the animals ate all the bail. So just do the same to the other side.